On Christmas Eve, my daughter raised a glass in our luxurious private dining room, looked straight at me and said, "Mom, this is the last time you'll sit down to eat with us. From tomorrow, you're no longer a member of this family. We don't need a judger." The next morning, they still believed the account was intact and the $2.5 million house purchase was still within reach. But by afternoon, my phone showed 73 missed calls and a barrage of messages that completely shattered all hope. I'm so grateful you're here with me today. Before we begin, drop a comment and let me know where are you watching, from what city or country. I love connecting with you all. Quick note, this story blends events with creative elements for entertainment and learning. Any similarity to names or places is coincidental, but the lessons, those are what matter. The crystal wine glass struck the fine china with a sharp, deliberate ring that cut through the low murmur of the dining room. My daughter Clarissa stood at our private table, her designer red dress catching the warm glow of the chandelier above us, and looked directly into my eyes with the kind of cold calculation I'd only seen in boardrooms when someone was about to deliver a killing blow. "Mother," she announced, her voice pitched just loud enough for the neighboring tables beyond our half-closed French doors to hear, "We've been discussing this as a family, and we think it's best if you stop being part of our lives." I set down my fork carefully, the seared scallops on my plate suddenly unappetizing. 32 years. That's how long I'd been funding my daughter's existence, from her private school tuition to her extravagant wedding 5 years ago. From the luxury SUV she drove to the designer wardrobe she wore like armor. And this was how it ended in the private dining room of the Capitol Grill on Christmas Eve, with my only child cutting me loose like a bad investment. I should have seen it coming. I'd arrived 20 minutes late, still wearing my tailored navy suit from a marathon day of contract negotiations. My 63-year-old bones ached from sitting in conference rooms since 7 that morning, but I'd booked this dinner weeks ago. I'd wanted us to celebrate Christmas together as a family. I'd even covered the $500 room deposit myself. The moment I'd walked through those French doors, I'd felt the chill. Clarissa had given me a sweeping look of disapproval, her perfectly shaped eyebrows arching as she took in my work attire. "You couldn't have gone home to change first. James and I made an effort." She gestured to her husband, who sat stiffly beside her in a velvet blazer that screamed new money. He'd avoided my eyes. Valerie, my late husband's younger sister, had smirked from across the table. She'd been wearing a glittering silver cocktail dress, the same one I'd bought her for her birthday 2 months prior, and had immediately launched into pointed commentary about how some people couldn't separate work from family. I'd apologized, tried to shift the conversation to pleasant territory. I'd asked about their holidays plans, complimented Valerie's dress without mentioning I'd paid for it, and suggested we order a nice bottle of wine to toast the season. That's when James had started talking about the house. "We're closing on a property in Buckhead," he'd said, puffing his chest slightly. $2.5 million. 5 bedrooms, wine cellar, pool house. The closing is set for December 26th. He'd paused, waiting for my reaction. "It's the kind of place where you really feel like you've made it, you know." I'd known exactly what making it meant for James. It meant living off the corporate accounts I'd been quietly funding for years, while he bounced from one failed business venture to another. But I'd kept my face neutral and offered congratulations. Clarissa had leaned forward, then her diamond tennis bracelet, another gift from me, catching the light. "We won't be needing your help anymore, Mother. We're finally building our own life, our own success." The emphasis on "our own" had been pointed, deliberate. The meal had continued like that, a slow descent into passive-aggressive warfare. Every comment from Clarissa or Valerie had been designed to land like a small cut. My controlling nature, my inability to let go, my judgmental attitude toward their choices. James had contributed less, but I'd noticed something. He'd looked uncomfortable. When Clarissa had made particularly cruel remarks, his jaw had tightened and his eyes had darted away. I'd wondered, not for the first time, how much he truly knew about the financial house of cards they'd built. Then had come the grand finale. Clarissa had stood, tapped her fork against her wine glass like she was about to deliver a wedding toast, and dropped the bomb. Public disownment delivered with a smile. The couple at the next table over had stopped mid-conversation. I'd heard their forks pause against their plates. "You need to let us thrive without your constant interference." Clarissa had continued warming to her performance. "We're moving forward without you." Valerie had nodded sagely as if witnessing some profound truth. For a moment, just a moment, I'd felt the old familiar pull, the urge to fix it, to smooth things over, to write whatever check would make this nightmare disappear. I'd been doing it for decades. What was one more rescue? But then I'd looked at my daughter's face, really looked at it, and saw nothing but cold entitlement. No love, no regret. Not even anger, just the bland expectation that I'd continue to play my role as the family ATM, while she played hers as the ungrateful beneficiary. Something inside me, something that had been bending for 30 years, finally snapped. I'd stood slowly wiping my mouth with the linen napkin. I'd caught the waiter's eye, a young man who'd been hovering nervously by the service station, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding at his assigned table. "Excuse me." I'd said, my voice level and clear. "I need you to split the check. I'll be paying for my sparkling water only. The rest of the table will handle the remaining balance." The waiter had blinked. "Ma'am, the total is currently—" "I understand." I'd pulled a $20 bill from my clutch and handed it to him. "For my water and your trouble. Merry Christmas." Clarissa's face had gone pale, then red. "Mother, don't be ridiculous. You invited us here. You can't just— You just told me I'm no longer part of this family." I'd interrupted, my tone pleasant but firm. "I'm simply respecting your wishes. Since I'm no longer family, it would be inappropriate for me to pay for your intimate family celebration." I turned and walked toward the exit without looking back. Behind me, I'd heard the first stirrings of panic. Valerie's sharp intake of breath. James's muttered, "Jesus Christ, what's the total?" Clarissa's rising voice, "Mother, get back here." I hadn't stopped. The maitre d' had held the door for me, his face carefully neutral. Outside, the December air had been crisp and cold, Christmas lights twinkling along Peachtree Street. The valet had brought my Mercedes around, and I'd slipped him a tip before sliding into the driver's seat. For 20 seconds, I'd sat there in the heated leather cocoon of my car hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly. I'd felt lighter than I had in years. The chains I'd been dragging, duty, obligation, maternal guilt, had simply fallen away. Then I'd reached for my phone. My corporate banking app had loaded in seconds. EH Estates, LLC. The real estate investment firm I'd built from nothing over 4 decades had multiple subsidiary accounts. The one labeled Family Assistance currently held $450,000. I'd been tracking it for weeks, watching Clarissa and James pool their resources, though I still didn't know where they'd gotten that kind of money. I'd opened the account settings and found Clarissa's authorized user profile. One tap. Revoke access. Another tap. Confirm. Then I'd initiated an internal transfer, sweeping every dollar out of that account and into my primary corporate trust. The balance had updated instantly, $0. I drafted one more email to the mortgage underwriter handling their Buckhead deal formally, withdrawing any implied financial backing or guarantor status. Sent. As I'd pulled out of the parking garage, I'd allowed myself one small smile. They'd wanted independence. They'd wanted to move forward without my interference. Tomorrow morning, they were going to get exactly what they'd asked for. The parking garage was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant echo of a car engine from another level. I'd pulled into a corner spot away from the elevator banks and now sat with my laptop balanced on the steering wheel, the glow of the screen painting my face in harsh white light. The banking app on my phone had been sufficient for the initial strike, revoking access, freezing funds. But what I needed to do now required the full corporate portal, the kind of deep financial surgery that couldn't be done on a 5-inch screen. I logged into the EH Estates administrative dashboard and pulled up the account structure I'd built over 40 years. 17 subsidiary accounts, each one serving a specific purpose: property acquisitions, renovation, capital, legal reserves, tax holdings. And there, near the bottom of the list, the one labeled Family Assistance. The name itself was a lie. It should have been called Clarissa's Safety Net or the Bailout Fund. I opened the transaction history and watched the scroll of my own generosity flow past. $15,000 6 years ago for a DUI lawyer after she'd wrapped her previous Mercedes around a telephone pole at 2 in the morning. $80,000 4 years ago to settle debts when her boutique clothing store collapsed. After 8 months of operation, she'd spent more on interior design than inventory. $120,000 5 years ago for the lavish wedding she demanded complete with ice sculptures and a live orchestra, because she'd needed to prove something to her college sorority sisters. And those were just the big-ticket items. There had been countless smaller rescues. Credit cards I'd quietly paid off. Rent checks I'd covered when James lost another job. The luxury SUV lease, the country club membership, the personal trainer, the monthly spa packages. I told myself it was what mothers did. We supported our children. We gave them opportunities we'd never had. But somewhere along the way, support had turned into enabling. An opportunity had curdled into entitlement. The $450,000 currently sitting in the account represented something different, though. I'd been tracking deposits for the past 3 weeks, watching the balance climb. Clarissa had transferred in $230,000 from somewhere I still didn't know the source. James had added another $220,000. They'd pooled their resources like they were building a war chest. And they'd done it in my corporate account, using it as a holding pen because I was certain James's personal accounts were probably still being garnished by creditors from his previous business failures. They'd thought they were clever. They'd thought I wouldn't notice, or wouldn't care, or would simply accept their entitlement to use my company's financial infrastructure as their personal piggy bank. They'd been wrong. I pulled up the subsidiary account settings and reviewed Clarissa's user profile. She'd been listed as an authorized user for 5 years with the ability to view balances and make small purchases for household necessities. Over time, those small purchases had crept larger. $1,000 grocery run at Whole Foods, $5,000 furniture purchases, $10,000 vacation deposits. I'd never confronted her about it. I'd told myself it was easier to just let it slide to avoid the confrontation to keep the peace. But there was no peace left to keep. I clicked the drop-down menu and selected Revoke All Privileges. The system prompted me to confirm. I didn't hesitate. Access revoked. The platinum card she carried, the one she'd probably used to buy that red designer dress she'd worn tonight, was now nothing more than an expensive piece of plastic. Next, I initiated a full account sweep. Every dollar, every cent transferred immediately to the EH Estates primary trust. The screen refreshed and the family assistance account balance updated $0. The money was gone, locked away in an account that required my biometric signature and a secondary authentication code to access. Even if Clarissa somehow convinced a bank manager to help her, even if she hired a lawyer, even if she somehow found a judge willing to listen on a holiday weekend, she'd still need me to authorize the release. And I wasn't going to. I drafted a second email, this one to the mortgage officer at Southeastern Trust. I'd met him twice at industry conferences, a sharp young man named Preston, who'd handled several of my commercial deals. The email was brief and professional. Preston, please note that Brenda Eleanor Davis. Eleanor Davis is formally withdrawing any implied guarantor status for the residential mortgage application submitted by Clarissa R. Davis and James M. Davis for property at 2847 Habersham Road, Northwest Atlanta, Georgia. EH Estates, LLC has no financial interest in this transaction and will not be providing collateral or financial backing of any kind. Any representations to the contrary are unauthorized and should be verified directly with my office. Best regards, Eleanor Davis, CFOEH Estates, LLC sent. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence of the garage, my hands resting on the leather steering wheel. Through the concrete pillars, I could see the distant glow of the city Christmas lights strung along buildings, the red taillights of late-night traffic on Peachtree Street, the illuminated bank towers that never truly slept. Somewhere out there, Clarissa and James were probably still at the restaurant, frantically trying to piece together how they were going to cover a $3,800 dinner bill. Valerie was probably making excuses about forgotten wallets. The waiter was probably getting increasingly impatient. Tomorrow, Christmas Day, they'd wake up and realize the platinum card wasn't working. They'd try to log into the banking portal and find themselves locked out. They'd call customer service and be told politely but firmly that they no longer had access. And then they'd panic, because their closing was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the morning on December 26th. And while the Silverman Law Group would be open with a skeleton staff for high-value private transactions, the money Clarissa and James had promised to wire would need to be initiated no later than end of business on Christmas Day to process through the Federal Reserve System in time. Wire transfers didn't happen instantly despite what people saw in movies. They moved through layers of banking infrastructure, clearinghouses, and federal verification systems. Domestic wires took 24 to 48 hours. International wires could take a week. And with Christmas Day being a federal banking holiday, nothing would move until December 26th at the earliest, which would be too late for a 10 a.m. closing. I checked my watch 11:07 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Clarissa and James had 14 hours of blissful ignorance left before their perfect plan collapsed. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking garage, driving home through empty streets decorated with twinkling lights and inflatable Santas. For the first time in 3 decades, I wasn't dreading Christmas morning. I wasn't wondering what crisis I'd need to solve, what check I'd need to write, what disaster I'd need to prevent. I was simply going to make coffee, watch the sunrise from my penthouse windows, and wait for the dominoes to fall. Christmas morning arrived wrapped in the kind of silence I'd forgotten existed. I woke at 7:30 without an alarm, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse painting geometric patterns across the Brazilian hardwood floors. For the first time in 30 years, there was no knot of anxiety in my stomach, no mental checklist of potential disasters I'd need to prevent before noon, no wondering which credit card Clarissa had maxed out overnight. There was just quiet. I made French press coffee, the good beans I'd been saving, the ones I never had time to properly brew, and settled into the leather armchair by the windows. Below me, downtown Atlanta was still sleepy, the streets nearly empty except for a few taxis and the occasional jogger. Most of the city was home with family unwrapping presents, making breakfast. I opened my laptop and pulled up the latest commercial real estate reports. There was a promising mixed-use development in Midtown I'd been tracking. The numbers were good, clean, honest. Unlike certain family members, my phone buzzed on the side table. I glanced at it, then deliberately looked away. It buzzed again and again. With a sigh, I picked it up and saw a notification I hadn't expected. I'd been added to a group chat. The name made me pause. The Buckhead Estate Owners. The audacity was almost impressive. I opened the chat and immediately understood what I was witnessing. This wasn't a family conversation. This was a performance. Clarissa was staging a show, and I was the intended audience. Clarissa. Photo of her and James in the back of a black Uber, both wearing designer sunglasses, holding Starbucks cups, smiling smugly at the camera. On our way to handle some final paperwork before tomorrow's closing. Can't wait to start decorating our new home. Clarissa. Speaking of which, I'm thinking we go with an old money aesthetic, definitely hiring a professional designer. No offense to anyone, but we don't want the place looking like a downtown bachelor pad. The dig was obvious. My penthouse was professionally curated, minimalist, modern, expensive. But to Clarissa, anything that wasn't dripping in gold trim and crystal chandeliers was bachelor pad decor. Valerie. So excited for you both. You deserve this after everything. Finally building your life on your terms. Clarissa. Exactly. No more toxic energy holding us back. 2026 is going to be our year. Also remind me to call that interior designer in Buckhead, the one who did the Andersons' place. We need her ASAP. I set the phone down and returned to my coffee. The performance continued without me. Over the next hour, the messages came in waves. Photos of design magazines, links to furniture websites, Clarissa's running commentary on everything she planned to buy, install, renovate. James chimed in occasionally with enthusiasm that felt performative. Can't wait for the home theater, and that wine cellar is going to be legendary. Then at 9:15, Valerie's tone shifted. Valerie, ladies, we need to talk about last night. The restaurant situation. I had to put $1,200 on my card because someone left us with a $3,800 bill. James, Clarissa. We need to settle this today. Clarissa, ugh. I can't believe she pulled that stunt. So petty. I'll Venmo you later, Val, after we handle closing stuff. James. My card's being weird. Tried to grab breakfast this morning and it got declined. Must be fraud protection or something. I'll call the bank. I poured my second cup of coffee and watched the city wake up below me. A dog walker. A family heading into a hotel lobby, probably visiting relatives. Normal people living normal lives, not drowning in lies and debt. My phone screen lit up with another message, but this time it was a banking alert. I tapped it open. Transaction denied. Wire transfer initiation. Amount $450,000. Reason insufficient privileges. Account restricted. Attempting user C. Davis. I checked the timestamp, 9:47 a.m. Clarissa had just tried to initiate the wire transfer from her phone, probably sitting in that Uber, probably still wearing those designer sunglasses, probably still smiling. Not anymore. My phone began vibrating continuously. Not the group chat. Individual calls. Clarissa, James. Clarissa again. James again. Clarissa. Valerie. Clarissa. 14 missed calls in 5 minutes. I silenced the phone and took a sip of coffee, watching the call notifications pile up on the screen like fallen leaves. When they finally stopped, the voicemails started arriving. I opened the transcription feature and read them in silence. Clarissa, 9:51 a.m. Mom, the bank is doing something weird with the wire transfer. Can you call them? I think there's a security hold or something. We need this done today so it processes for tomorrow. Call me back. James, 9:53 a.m. Eleanor. I don't know what's going on, but my banking app won't let me access the investment account. Says I don't have privileges. Can you check with your corporate team? This is urgent. Clarissa, 9:58 a.m. Mom, this isn't funny. I know you can see these messages. My card just got declined at Starbucks for coffee. This is humiliating. Call the bank right now and fix whatever error they made. Valerie, 10:02 a.m. Eleanor. I don't know what's happening, but Clarissa's freaking out. Something about the accounts. Can you please call her back? She's in the middle of closing on a house tomorrow. Clarissa. 10:09 a.m. Where are you? The bank says my user access was revoked. That makes no sense. I've had that card for 5 years. This has to be a mistake. Fix this. The progression was perfect. Confusion bleeding into frustration, frustration curdling into panic. I walked to the windows and looked out over the city, my reflection ghostly in the glass. Behind me, my phone continued to buzz with increasing desperation. They'd wanted independence. They'd wanted to move forward on their own without my toxic energy. Well, they were about to learn exactly what independence looked like. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup in the sink, and settled back into my chair. There were 17 more voicemails waiting, but I didn't need to listen to them. I could imagine the arc perfectly: denial, anger, bargaining. More anger, desperation. The group chat had gone silent now. No more photos, no more design magazine links. Just 3 little dots appearing and disappearing as Clarissa typed, deleted, typed again, searching for words that would make this nightmare make sense. My banking app chimed softly with another alert: transaction denied. Wire transfer initiation. Amount $450,000. Attempting user J. Davis. James had tried now, too. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, they were supposed to be sitting in a law office conference room, signing papers, celebrating. Clarissa would be wearing another expensive dress. James would have that velvet blazer. They'd probably have brought champagne. Instead, they'd be explaining to a very impatient real estate attorney why they couldn't produce the money they'd promised. And I'd be here in my quiet penthouse, finally free. At precisely 10:47 a.m. on the day after Christmas, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Not a text, not a notification. An actual voice call, something that had become increasingly rare in an age of digital messages and voicemail avoidance. I was in my home office reviewing acquisition proposals for a strip mall in Marietta when the screen lit up. The area code was local. Atlanta. But the number itself was unfamiliar, and my calendar showed no scheduled calls. Something told me this wasn't Clarissa. This was something bigger. I let it go to voicemail and returned to my spreadsheet. 30 seconds later, the notification appeared. I tapped it, bringing the phone to my ear. Ms. Davis, this is Arthur Silverman, senior partner at the Silverman Law Group. The voice was measured professional with the kind of careful tone attorneys used when they were about to deliver bad news. I'm calling regarding a real estate transaction that was scheduled at our offices this morning. There have been some significant irregularities with the closing documents, and I need to speak with you urgently. My direct line is 404-555-0147. I'd appreciate a call back at your earliest convenience. I set the phone down slowly. Arthur Silverman. I knew that name. The Silverman Law Group handled high-end residential closings and commercial real estate transactions across the Southeast. They were the kind of firm that didn't work with amateurs. Their client list read like a who's who of Atlanta's real estate elite. I'd competed against their clients on several acquisition deals over the years, and they definitely didn't call people on December 26th unless something was seriously wrong. Before I could process what irregularities might mean, my phone buzzed with a text. This one I recognized immediately. Malcolm Pierce, a fellow real estate investor I'd known for 15 years. We'd worked on 2 joint ventures, served on the same industry boards, and maintained the kind of professional friendship built on mutual respect and shared war stories. Malcolm, Eleanor, are you sitting down? I'm at the coffee shop on Peachtree, near Silverman's office. Just saw your daughter storm out of their building. James looked like someone ran over his dog. You want the details. My fingers moved before my brain fully caught up. Eleanor, tell me everything. The phone rang immediately. Malcolm calling. Eleanor, he said without preamble. I don't know what's going on with your family, but what I just witnessed was spectacular in the worst possible way. I'm listening. I'm here closing on a condo purchase, quick deal, easy transaction. Silverman's firm is handling both sides. I got here early, grabbed coffee across the street. He paused. Your daughter and her husband showed up at 10 sharp. Designer everything. Clarissa was taking selfies in the lobby like she was at a premiere. Despite everything, I felt a small stab of something. Not quite sympathy, maybe embarrassment. The closing started normally. Malcolm continued. But then Silverman asked for the wire confirmation number for the deposit. That's when things went sideways. How sideways? Clarissa showed him some kind of error screen on her phone. Banking issue, she said. Silverman was patient, gave her the conference room Wi-Fi, told her to try again. Malcolm's voice dropped. Eleanor, she tried 3 times, same result. Then she asked if she could put the deposit on a debit card. I closed my eyes. She tried to swipe a card for $450,000. How did you never mind? Yes. Silverman looked at her like she'd grown a second head, but he agreed to run it through their merchant system. Probably just to keep the deal moving. He exhaled. Declined. Insufficient funds. She made the paralegal run it again. Declined again. Error code 51, account empty. And then your daughter started yelling at the paralegal, screaming that the girl was typing the numbers wrong. She snatched the card back, demanded they try a 3rd time. That's when the merchant terminal locked the card completely, printed out a little slip that said, retain card. The image was almost painful to imagine. Clarissa in her designer dress screaming at a 23-year-old paralegal over a declined card, while a room full of professionals watched. The seller walked, Malcolm said. Just stood up, told Silverman the deal was dead and left. Very calm, very final. He's keeping the earnest money, $25,000. Breach of contract. How did Clarissa react? About how you'd expect. James tried to calm her down, but she turned on him. Started asking where the money was, why he hadn't fixed it. They were still arguing when I left the coffee shop 10 minutes ago. Malcolm, did Silverman say anything else? Anything about the documents? There was a pause. That's the other thing. He kept looking at some paperwork, frowning. I overheard him talking to his associate something about a power of attorney that didn't look right. He used the word forged Eleanor twice. Shah, my blood went cold. I have to go, I said. Thank you for the information. Eleanor, whatever's happening, be careful. Silverman doesn't throw around words like forged casually. That's federal territory. I ended the call and stared at the phone in my hand. Clarissa had tried to use my corporate account to fund a mansion. That much I'd known. But forged documents, she'd done something beyond simply stealing money. She'd falsified legal paperwork and used it to commit fraud. This wasn't just a family crisis anymore. This was a crime. The decision took less than 5 seconds. I picked up my phone and dialed Arthur Silverman's direct line. He answered on the first ring. Ms. Davis, he said, his voice tense. Thank you for calling back. Mr. Silverman, I understand there was an issue at your office this morning. That's putting it mildly. I heard papers shuffling in the background. Ms. Davis, we need to discuss a very serious matter regarding your daughter's attempt to pledge property she apparently doesn't own. According to the documents submitted to our firm, Clarissa Davis presented a power of attorney claiming authorization to mortgage a property at 428 Maple Grove Road. She also provided title documentation suggesting you are the sole owner. I am the owner, I said. Through my company, E.H. Estates, LLC. I purchased that property 7 years ago. Then you did not authorize your daughter to mortgage it. I did not. The silence on the other end lasted 3 full seconds. When Silverman spoke again, his voice had shifted from tense to grave. Ms. Davis, this isn't just a failed real estate transaction. This is potential federal wire fraud. Your daughter collected $450,000 from an investor, claiming she was selling property she had no legal right to sell. That's not a family dispute. That's a felony. The room felt suddenly smaller, colder. I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation, Silverman continued. I'm legally obligated to file a suspicious activity report with federal authorities. But before I do that, I need to verify the facts directly with you. Are you willing to come to my office, or would you prefer I come to you? Neither. I said. Not yet. Mr. Silverman, my daughter is going to call me, probably within the next few hours. When she does, I'd like you to be on the line, listening, recording if possible. Another pause. Ms. Davis, are you asking me to witness your daughter incriminating herself? I'm asking you to hear the truth directly from her mouth, before she has time to invent a story or hire someone to spin this. That's highly irregular. So is attempting to steal $500,000 using forged documents. My voice was steady, calm. I'll call you back within 2 hours. Have your recorder ready. I hung up before he could object. Outside my office windows, the December sun was bright and cold. Somewhere in this city, Clarissa was probably sitting in a car or a hotel room, panicking, trying to figure out how to fix the unfixable. She'd wanted to cut me out of her life. She'd wanted independence. She was about to learn that independence came with consequences she'd never imagined. Silverman wasted no time. Mrs. Davis, your daughter, has filed a power of attorney claiming permission to mortgage 428 Maple Grove Road. I need you to confirm these claims. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear and closed my eyes. The old house. Of course it was the old house. Mr. Silverman. I said carefully, my voice steady despite the slow burn of anger rising in my chest. I need to be very clear with you. I have never signed any power of attorney authorizing Clarissa Davis or anyone else to mortgage, sell, or otherwise encumber the property at 428 Maple Grove Road. There was a pause. I could hear him typing, the sharp click of keys filling the silence. Mrs. Davis, he said slowly, your daughter submitted documents claiming she holds legal authority over that property. The investor, a Mr. Bradley Mitchell from Savannah, was prepared to wire $450,000 based on those documents. Are you telling me those documents are fraudulent? Yes, I said flatly. And I'm also telling you that Clarissa doesn't own that house. I do. Another pause. Longer this time. You own it? Yes, through E.H. Estates, LLC. I've owned it for 7 years. I heard him exhale sharply. Mrs. Davis, this is a very serious allegation. If what you're saying is true, we're not talking about a family dispute. We're talking about wire fraud, forgery, potentially federal charges. I know exactly what we're talking about, Mr. Silverman. I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. The morning light was cold and bright, the kind of light that made everything look sharp and unforgiving. Let me give you the background, I said. 7 years ago, in December 2018, I discovered that Clarissa had a gambling problem, a serious one. Flashback December 2018. I'll never forget the way my hand shook when I opened that envelope. It was a foreclosure notice, 28 days to vacate. The house I'd helped them buy, the red brick colonial on Maple Grove Road, the one with the magnolia tree in the front yard, where Sophie used to play, was about to be seized by the bank. I didn't confront Clarissa right away. I hired a private investigator first, David Reynolds. He was expensive, discreet, and thorough. What he found made me sick. Clarissa had been frequenting an underground poker ring in Marietta for over 2 years. High-stakes games. She'd lost nearly $80,000. When the cash ran out, she'd started taking out second mortgages, payday loans, maxing out credit cards. James didn't even know. She'd forged his signature on half the paperwork. By the time David handed me his report, Clarissa's financial life was a smoking crater. I could have walked away. I could have let the bank take the house, let her face the consequences, let James find out the hard way. But Sophie was only 5 years old, and despite everything, Clarissa was still my daughter. So I made a deal with the bank, a short sale. I bought the house through EH Estates for $215,000, 30% below market value. The bank accepted because they wanted to avoid foreclosure costs. Clarissa and James were allowed to stay as tenants, paying rent directly into an escrow account I controlled. I never told her. I never told anyone except my attorney and my accountant. I told myself it was to protect Sophie, to give Clarissa a chance to rebuild without the shame of losing everything, to give her stability while she got help. But part of me, maybe the part that still hoped she'd grow up, wanted to see if she'd change, if she'd learn, if she'd ever become the person I'd raised her to be. She didn't. Present December 26, 2025, 11:07 a.m. So you've owned that house for 7 years, Silverman said carefully, and your daughter has been living there believing she still owns it. Correct. And she's now attempting to mortgage a property she doesn't own, using forged documents to secure funds for a separate real estate transaction. That's exactly what she's doing. I heard him typing again, faster this time. Mrs. Davis, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Did you revoke her access to any financial accounts in the last 48 hours? I smiled grimly. Yes. I revoked her authorized user status on my corporate credit account late on Christmas Eve. The account balance is now 0. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Mr. Silverman, I assume Mr. Mitchell hasn't wired the money yet. No. We flagged the documents this morning because the notary's seal looked irregular. That's why I called. Good. Then we still have time to stop this. Mrs. Davis, with all due respect, this is beyond stopping it. If your daughter knowingly submitted forged documents to secure a $450,000 loan against property she doesn't own, she's committed multiple felonies. Wire fraud alone carries up to 20 years in federal prison. I understand. His voice was sharp now, almost angry, because once I report this to the state bar and the FBI, there's no turning back. Your daughter will be investigated, arrested, prosecuted. Is that really what you want? I closed my eyes, thought of the restaurant on Christmas Eve, the cold sneer in Clarissa's voice. You're toxic. We're done with you. 30 years of sacrifice. 30 years of bailing her out, covering her mistakes, swallowing my pride so she could keep hers. And she called me toxic. Mr. Silverman. I said quietly, I want you to do exactly what the law requires. But before you make any reports, I need you to do something for me. What? I want you to call Clarissa. Put her on the line with both of us. I want to hear her explain those documents herself. There was a long silence. You want a 3-way call? Yes. Mrs. Davis, if she admits to anything on that call, it will be admissible evidence. You understand that I'm counting on it. Another pause. Then quietly, you're setting a trap. I'm giving her a chance to tell the truth, I said. If she lies, that's her choice. Silverman exhaled slowly. All right, stay on the line. I'm calling her now. I heard the line click, heard the faint ringing tone, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt something like peace, because the house of cards was finally collapsing, and I was the one holding the match. The afternoon light stretched long shadows across my living room floor as my phone entered its 4th hour of relentless assault. 73 missed calls, 42 text messages, 6 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. I sat in my favorite armchair by the window, a cup of chamomile tea cooling on the side table, and watched the notifications roll in like waves against a shore. I had spent decades answering every call, every crisis, every middle-of-the-night emergency. I had dropped everything, work meetings, vacations, my own peace of mind, to rescue Clarissa from whatever disaster she'd created. Today I didn't. Today I simply watched. Phase 1. Confusion 10:32 a.m. to 11:15 a.m. The first messages came in while I was still on the phone with Silverman setting up the 3-way call trap. Clarissa 10:32 a.m. Mom, something's wrong with the bank. Can you call them? Wire didn't go through. Clarissa 10:41 a.m. Mom, this is urgent. Call me back right now. James 10:58 a.m. Eleanor, we need to talk. There's been some kind of mix-up with the closing. Clarissa 11:03 a.m. Why aren't you answering? The lawyer is asking weird questions about Maple Grove. Clarissa 11:15 a.m. Pick up the phone. I read each one carefully, sipping my tea. The confusion in those early messages was almost innocent. They genuinely believed this was a technical glitch, something I could fix with a phone call and my account number. They had no idea the ground beneath them was already gone. Phase 2. Anger. 11:23 a.m. to 1:47 p.m. By late morning, confusion had curdled into rage. Clarissa. 11:23 a.m. I know you're doing this because of Christmas dinner. You're sabotaging us over one argument, Clarissa. 11:35 a.m. This is so typical. You can't stand that we're finally building something without you. James 11:52 a.m. Eleanor. Whatever you think we did, this is going too far. We're about to lose $25,000. Clarissa. 12:14 p.m. You're a petty, vindictive old woman. I hope you're proud of yourself. Clarissa. 12:41 p.m. You know what? Fine. We don't need you. We never needed you. Clarissa. 1:03 p.m. James is calling his mother. She'll help us. At least she acts like family. Clarissa. 1:47 p.m. His mom said no. Are you happy now? I set my phone face down on the table and closed my eyes. This was the Clarissa I knew. The one who lashed out when cornered. The one who blamed everyone but herself. The one who believed that love meant endless bailouts and unconditional rescue no matter how many times she burned me. You're toxic, she'd said on Christmas Eve. We're cutting you off. And yet here she was, 48 hours later, demanding I save her. Again. Phase 3. Bargaining 1:55 p.m. to 3:32 p.m. The anger phase didn't last. It never did. Clarissa's rage always dissolved into negotiation when she realized I wasn't caving. Clarissa, 1:55 p.m. Mom. I'm sorry I said those things. I was upset. Can we please just talk? Clarissa, 2:17 p.m. The seller is threatening to sue us for the earnest money. We can't afford that. Please. James, 2:34 p.m. Eleanor. I know we hurt you, but this house is for Sophie. Don't punish her for our mistakes. Clarissa, 2:58 p.m. I'll apologize in person. I'll do whatever you want. Just please fix the account. Clarissa, 3:11 p.m. Mom, I'm begging you. Clarissa, 3:32 p.m. If you ever loved me, you'll help us now. I read that last message 3 times. If you ever loved me. That was the line Clarissa always used when she wanted something. The emotional grenade she'd throw to bypass logic, accountability, consequences. As if love meant enabling her self-destruction. As if being a good mother meant never letting her fail. I'd fallen for it 100 times before. Not today. Phase 4. Desperation. 3:45 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. By late afternoon, the messages had taken on a frantic, broken quality. Clarissa. 3:45 p.m. The lawyer called it fraud. He said forged documents. I don't understand. Please call me back. Clarissa, 4:02 p.m. Mom, I'm scared. James 4:21 p.m. Eleanor Silverman just told us you own Maple Grove. Is that true? How is that possible? Clarissa, 4:38 p.m. You bought our house without telling us. What kind of mother does that? Clarissa, 4:55 p.m. James is furious. He's talking about leaving me. This is all your fault. Clarissa, 5:12 p.m. Mom. Please. I made a mistake. I know I did, but I can't go to jail over this. Help me, please. Clarissa, 5:30 p.m. I'm your daughter, and then buried in the avalanche a single message from someone else. Valerie, 4:47 p.m. Eleanor. I need you to know I had nothing to do with the POA documents. I didn't even know about Maple Grove. Please don't drag me into this. I stared at that message for a long time. Valerie, the daughter-in-law who had smiled and nodded through Clarissa's schemes, who had played the role of supportive sister-in-law, while my daughter bled me dry, was now trying to save herself. The rats were abandoning the ship. I picked up my phone and sent a single text. To Arthur Silverman, 5:34 p.m. They're panicking. The call is coming soon. Are you ready? His reply came within 30 seconds. Silverman ready. I'll conference you in when she calls me. I set the phone down and returned to the window. The sun was sinking now, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Below the city moved on people heading home from work. Christmas lights still twinkling in windows, life continuing as if the world hadn't just shifted beneath my feet. At 5:47 p.m., my phone rang. Clarissa, Mobile. I watched it vibrate on the table, the screen glowing in the dim room. I didn't pick up. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, testing my own resolve. Testing the part of me that still wanted to answer, still wanted to fix it, still wanted to be the mother who made everything okay. The call went to voicemail. 10 seconds later, the notification appeared. New voicemail, Clarissa. I pressed play. Her voice was raw, broken, terrified. Mom, James is talking about leaving me. The lawyer says I could go to prison. You're my mother. You have to help me. Please call me back. Please, I'm so scared. Mom, please, I can't do this alone. Please don't leave me like this. Please. The message ended. I sat in the gathering darkness staring at the phone in my hand and felt something inside me crack. Not break, just crack. Because even now, even after everything, part of me wanted to answer. But I didn't call back. Because the other part of me, the part that had been silenced for 30 years, knew exactly what would happen if I did. The cycle would start again, and this time I'd be the one destroyed. So I sat in silence and I waited. And when the phone rang again at 6:03 p.m. this time from Arthur Silverman's office line, I answered. Mr. Silverman, I said quietly, let's do this. I poured myself a glass of Cabernet and settled into the leather chair by the window as the sun sank behind Atlanta's skyline. The city sparkled with Christmas lights, thousands of tiny points of hope in the gathering darkness. My phone buzzed on the armrest. This time I answered. Hello, Clarissa. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, then the sound I'd been expecting sobbing. Mom! She choked out her voice thick with tears. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean any of it. I was stressed, and I said horrible things, and I need you. Please. I took a slow sip of wine and said nothing. Mom, are you there? I'm here. She broke down again, the kind of ugly crying that sounded real. Maybe it was. I'm so scared. James is furious. The lawyer is saying things about fraud and federal charges, and I don't understand any of it. I just need you to fix this. Please. You always fix things. I closed my eyes and saw her as a child seeking comfort. Make it better, Mommy. When had I become the monster in her dreams? Clarissa. I said quietly, I need you to tell me what happened at the closing. What? The closing. This morning. Walk me through it. She sniffled. I don't understand why that matters. I just need you to call the bank and authorize walk me through it. I repeated firmer this time. A pause. Then defensive. James and I showed up at Silverman's office at 10. We had all the paperwork. Everything was ready. Then the wire didn't go through, and Silverman started asking weird questions about Maple Grove, and what about the $450,000? Silence. Go, Clarissa. Where was that money coming from? That's not your business, Mom. You're asking me to help you, I said calmly. I need to understand the situation. You always said I should be more independent. She shot back, her voice shifting from tears to anger in an instant. You always said I relied on you too much. Well, James and I found our own financing, our own investor. We were doing this without you for once. Who's the investor? Just a business opportunity, a private lender. What's his name? Why does it matter? I took another sip of wine and waited. Mom, I don't have time for this. The seller is threatening to sue us for $25,000. We're going to lose everything. Then answer the question. She made a frustrated noise. Fine. His name is Bradley Mitchell. He's from Savannah. He invests in real estate flips. Are you happy now? And what did you offer him as collateral? Another pause. Longer this time. Clarissa, what collateral did you offer Bradley Mitchell? The Maple Grove house, she said, finally, her voice small. I see. I kept my tone neutral. And how were you planning to repay him? James and I were going to flip it, she said, the words coming faster now, defensive. Once we got the Buckhead mansion, we'd sell Maple Grove for a profit. The market's up 30% since we bought it. It was smart, Mom. Entrepreneurial, exactly what you always said I should be. My heart twisted. She actually believed she owned it. 7 years. 7 years she'd been living in that house, paying rent into an escrow account, never once questioning why the payments went to a trust instead of a mortgage company. Never once asking to see the deed, because it had never occurred to her that I would do anything except hand her everything she wanted. Clarissa, I said slowly. Who told you that you could sell 428 Maple Grove Road? I don't need anyone's permission. Her voice rose shrill now. I own it. You gave it to me years ago when you helped us with the mortgage, remember. And the power of attorney. The line went dead silent. How do you know about that? I didn't answer. Mom, how do you know about the POA? The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Then in a quieter voice, Did Silverman call you? Yes. What did he say? He asked me to confirm that I had authorized you to mortgage 428 Maple Grove Road. And I told him I hadn't. I heard her breathing fast and shallow. But that's just a technicality, she said quickly, the desperation back in her voice. It's my house, Mom. You gave it to me. So technically the POA doesn't even matter because Clarissa, stop. Because it's already mine and hi, Clarissa. She stopped. I need to ask you something, I said. And I need you to tell me the truth. Okay? Did you forge my signature on those documents? She made a strangled sound. Mom, you don't understand. James was under so much pressure. His business partners were expecting us to close on the Buckhead house. We couldn't back out. We just needed a bridge loan, something temporary, and you weren't answering your phone, and that's not an answer. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Easy for you to say, she spat. You've never needed anyone. You've never been desperate. You've never had people depending on you. I thought of 30 years of bailouts. 30 years of midnight phone calls and emergency loans and crisis management. 30 years of putting my daughter's needs ahead of my own retirement, my own peace, my own life. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "You're right. I don't know what it's like to be you." She softened immediately, sensing weakness. "Mom, I'm your only daughter. Are you really going to let me go to prison? What would Dad say?" My throat tightened. What would Michael say? I looked out at the city lights and imagined him sitting beside me, his hand warm in mine. "Your father," I said quietly, "would be heartbroken, but he'd tell me to stop enabling you. Mom, I need to think Clarissa. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. Wait, Mom, please don't." I hung up. For a moment, I sat there staring at the phone in my hand, feeling the weight of 30 years of motherhood pressing down on me. Then I took a deep breath and dialed Arthur Silverman. He answered on the first ring. "Mr. Silverman," I said quietly. "She's ready to talk. I'm going to call her back in 9 minutes. I need you to conference in, silently, don't say anything, don't make a sound, just listen, and record everything. Eleanor," he said carefully, "if she admits to forging your signature on a recorded line, that's admissible evidence. You understand what you're doing? I understand. There's no going back after this." I looked out at the city one last time at the lights twinkling in the darkness and thought of Clarissa at 7 years old climbing into my lap. "Make it better, Mommy." But some things couldn't be made better. Some things could only be made right. "I know," I said. "Conference in at 6:20 and Mr. Silverman." "Yes, make sure the recording is clear." I hung up and poured myself another glass of wine. 9 minutes, then the trap would close. 9 minutes later, I called Clarissa back. Arthur Silverman was already connected on a muted line, his digital recorder running in a conference room downtown. My daughter had no idea that every word she was about to say would be captured by an officer of the court. I'd spent decades in real estate. I knew one thing for certain: people reveal their true nature when they think they're winning. "Mom," Clarissa answered on the first ring, her voice tight with desperate hope. "Did you figure out how to fix this?" "I'm working on it," I said calmly, settling deeper into my chair. "But I need to understand the investor deal first. Walk me through the numbers." Okay. I heard her exhale, relieved. "So the investor, his name is Marcus Holloway. He's offering $450,000 for an exclusive purchase option on Maple Grove. It's a standard bridge arrangement. We use his money for the Buckhead down payment, close on the mansion, then flip Maple Grove within 6 months and repay him with the profit. Everyone wins." Marcus. The name landed like a stone in my stomach, but I kept my voice neutral. "And what documentation did you provide him?" "Proof of ownership, title records. The power of attorney so we could move quickly without waiting for you to sign everything." She said it so casually, as if forging legal documents was just another item on a to-do list. "Clarissa," I said slowly, "did you sign my name on those documents?" A pause. Then defensive. "I had to, Mom. Marcus needed proof we could execute the deal. You weren't answering your phone, you were too busy with your own properties, and James was under so much pressure from his partners. I just streamlined the paperwork. You would have signed it anyway if I'd asked." I closed my eyes. There it was. Confession number 1. On the other end of the line, I heard the faint click of Silverman's keyboard. He was taking notes. "So you forged my signature," I said carefully, "and accepted $450,000 for a house you don't own. Wait." Her voice sharpened. "Don't say it like that. I do own it. You gave me that house." "I paid off your mortgage," I said quietly. "There's a difference." "That's the same thing." "No, Clarissa, it's not." "Why, what are you talking about?" I took a slow breath. 7 years ago, when you were about to lose Maple Grove to foreclosure, I didn't pay off your mortgage. I bought the house from the bank in a short sale. E.H. Estates, LLC, has held the title ever since. You've been renting from me for 7 years. Silence. "Then you're lying." "Public records," I said calmly. "You can check them yourself. Fulton County Registry of Deeds. Parcel number 14-0287-0043. Purchased by E.H. Estates on December 18, 2018 for $215,000. You..." Her voice cracked. You manipulative bitch. You let me think I owned it. You let me live there for years believing it was mine. This is exactly why I cut you off. You're a control freak. Clarissa. No, you know what? Fuck you, Mom. Fuck your games and your lies and your, is James there with you? I interrupted. What, is James in the room? I heard muffled movement, then James's voice in the background, angry and slurred. Tell her about Marcus, Clarissa. Tell her the real plan. Shut up, James. Who's Marcus? I asked, though my heart was already racing. None of your business. Clarissa, if you want my help, you need to tell me who Marcus is. He's the investor I already told you. And I pressed, more muffled arguing, James shouting something I couldn't make out, Clarissa screaming at him to shut up, to get out, to leave her alone. Then her voice came back on the line, ragged and furious. Fine. You want the truth? Marcus and I have been working together for 2 years. He's a developer. He saw the potential in Buckhead before anyone else did. We were going to flip the mansion and split the profit 60-40. James was just window dressing. The business partners, the pressure, that was all bullshit. This was my deal, mine. And you ruined it because you can't stand to see me succeed without you. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not surprise, not even anger, just a deep, cold sadness. So, you forged my signature, I said quietly. Lied to your husband and defrauded an investor, all for a real estate flip. It's called entrepreneurship, Mom. Something you wouldn't understand because you're too busy hoarding your properties like some kind of Ms. Clarissa Davis. A new voice cut through the line. Male, calm, precise. Silverman. This is attorney Arthur Silverman with Silverman Law Group. I've been recording this entire conversation with your mother's consent as part of a wire fraud investigation. I advise you to retain legal counsel immediately and refrain from making any further statements. Dead silence. Then in a small, broken voice, Mom, yes, Clarissa, you let the lawyer listen. You said I was toxic, I said quietly. You said you didn't need me. I'm just giving you what you asked for. Mom, her voice rose to a shriek. You can't do this. I'm your daughter. And you forged my signature, defrauded an investor, and lied to your husband. My voice didn't waver. You did this to yourself. I hate you, she screamed. I hate you, I hate you, I hate. I hung up. The silence in my penthouse was deafening. I sat there, phone in hand, staring out at the city lights. My hand was shaking. My chest felt tight, as if someone had wrapped steel bands around my ribs. Was this justice, or just loss? I thought of Clarissa at 7, at 15, at 25. I thought of every crisis I'd solved, every mistake I'd covered, every time I'd told myself this time will be different. But it never was. And now my phone exploded with incoming calls. Not Clarissa, James, then Valerie, then James again. They were turning on each other. I watched the notifications pile up and felt nothing. But one name kept circling in my mind, the name Clarissa had let slip in her rage. Marcus. Marcus and I have been working together for 2 years. Not just a business partner, not just an investor. I opened my laptop and pulled up the private investigator's file, the one I'd commissioned 3 months ago, when Clarissa's spending patterns had suddenly shifted. Hotel charges in Savannah, cash withdrawals every Friday, a new business consultant she'd mentioned once, then never again. I scrolled to the photos section, and there he was, Marcus Holloway, 38, developer, divorced, standing outside the Ritz-Carlton in Buckhead with his arm around my daughter, kissing her. The timestamp, November 14th, 2025, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and texted Silverman. Eleanor, 7:04 p.m. There's more. I'm sending you a file. His response came immediately. Silverman, how much worse can this get? I attached the PI's report and hit send. Eleanor. Much worse. I set the phone down and poured myself another glass of wine. Outside, the city sparkled. Inside, I felt the last fragile thread connecting me to my daughter finally snap. Tomorrow I would call the FBI. Tonight I would grieve. I hadn't slept. At exactly 6 in the morning, my doorbell chimed. The security camera showed a man in a gray suit holding a manila envelope David Reynolds, the private investigator I'd hired 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, when I'd noticed irregular charges on my corporate card, hotel suites in Savannah, consulting fees that didn't match any vendor I recognized, cash withdrawals that Clarissa had coded as business expenses. I'd told myself I was being paranoid. I'd hired David just in case. Now looking at the thickness of that envelope, I realized my instincts had been right all along. I let him in and poured us both coffee. David sat across from me at the dining table, opened his briefcase, and pulled out a file at least 2 inches thick. "Mrs. Davis," he said quietly, "I'm going to be direct with you. What I found is worse than you thought." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug and nodded. "Show me." He slid the first set of photos across the table. Valerie and Clarissa, meeting at a Starbucks in Buckhead. 6 different dates over the past 6 months, time-stamped and documented. "They've been coordinating," David said. "Your daughter paid Valerie $15,000 over 3 months. It's coded on your corporate card as consulting fees." I stared at the photos. Valerie, my late husband's younger sister, the woman I'd trusted for decades, leaning across the table, reviewing documents with Clarissa. What kind of consulting? David pulled out another document, a notarized affidavit, dated November 22, 2025. Valerie signed as a witness on the power of attorney documents, he said. She notarized Clarissa's forged signature, gave it legitimacy. My stomach turned. There's more. He pulled up a text thread on his tablet and turned it toward me. Valerie to Clarissa, November 18th. Cut the old woman out. Once Buckhead closes, we split 60-40 like we agreed. Clarissa, she'll figure it out eventually. Valerie, by then you'll have the mansion and the equity. What's she gonna do, sue her own daughter, Clarissa? Exactly, she's too proud for that. I closed my eyes. Valerie, my husband's baby sister, the woman I'd helped through law school, the woman I'd invited to every holiday, every family event, every milestone. She'd been planning to rob me. How much was she promised? I asked quietly. $50,000 when the Buckhead mansion closed. I set down my coffee. My hands were shaking too badly to hold it. David shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Davis, I need to show you something else. He pulled out a second set of photos. Clarissa and a man I didn't recognize. Outside the Ritz-Carlton, his arm around her waist, kissing. Marcus Holloway, David said. 38 years old, self-described entrepreneur, in reality a professional con artist. How long? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. 8 months. 8 months, while she was married. While she was living in the house I'd saved. While she was using my credit cards. David slid over hotel receipts. $12,000 in charges at the Ritz, coded as business travel. Suite bookings, room service, champagne, all on my corporate card. There are text messages, he said gently. Do you want to see them? I nodded, though part of me wanted to burn the whole file. He pulled them up on his tablet. Clarissa to Marcus, December 10th. Once we have the mansion, I'm leaving, James. We can finally be together. Marcus. What about the old lady Clarissa? She's busy with her boring properties. By the time she notices, we'll be gone. Marcus, December 15th. The $450,000 is just the start. Your mom's worth millions. We play this right, we're set for life. Clarissa, I know. Trust me, I've been planning this for months. I read the messages twice, 3 times. My daughter wasn't just stealing from me. She was planning to drain me dry and disappear. There's more about Marcus, David said quietly. He's married. 2 kids in Tennessee, and Clarissa isn't his only mark. He showed me surveillance photos, Marcus with 3 other women, different cities, different aliases, all of them wealthy, all of them middle-aged, all of them believing he was going to leave his life and run away with them. He has no intention of leaving his wife, David said. His plan is to take Clarissa's money, your money, and vanish. He's done it 4 times before. I stared at the photo of my daughter kissing a man who was planning to rob her blind, and I felt, Nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a vast, empty exhaustion. "There's one more thing you should know," David said, "about James." He pulled out a browser history printout. James has been researching divorce attorneys for 3 weeks. Search terms include wife commits fraud, can I go to jail for spouse's crime, emergency custody filing. I looked up. He didn't know. I don't think he knew the full extent. David showed me surveillance footage from a UPS store. Clarissa and Valerie getting documents notarized. James wasn't there. "He's guilty of greed and stupidity," David said. "But not conspiracy to commit forgery. I think Clarissa told him you'd approve the power of attorney. When he finds out about Marcus and the forgery, he's going to flip. So James thought I'd signed off on the deal. That's my assessment. And when he finds out his wife has been cheating on him with a con artist while forging your signature and stealing your money," he paused, "he'll cooperate. Probably testify against her to save himself." I sat back in my chair. My daughter had betrayed her husband stolen from her mother and planned to run away with a con artist who was also betraying her. It was almost poetic, in a bitter, devastating kind of way. I closed the file and looked at David. "Send a copy of this report to James Davis at his work email," I said quietly. "Anonymous sender. He deserves to know who he married." David nodded. "And the authorities, send a copy to Arthur Silverman. Clarissa's legal troubles just multiplied." He packed up his briefcase and stood. At the door, he paused. "Mrs. Davis, for what it's worth." "I'm sorry. No mother should have to read a file like this." I nodded, unable to speak. When he left, I sat alone in the early morning light staring at the manila envelope on my table. Decades of sacrifice, of second chances, of unconditional love. And this was what it had bought me. A daughter who planned to rob me blind, a sister-in-law who helped her do it, and a son-in-law who'd been too blinded by greed to see the truth. I picked up my phone and texted Silverman. "Eleanor, 6:47 a.m., new evidence incoming." Valerie was complicit. Clarissa planned to disappear with a con artist. James may be salvageable as a witness. His response came 2 minutes later. "Silverman, this is now a RICO-level case. I'm calling the FBI this morning." I set the phone down and walked to the window. The sun was rising over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. It should have felt like a new beginning. Instead, it felt like an ending. By noon, my phone rang. Not Clarissa this time, James, his voice shaking with a rage I'd never heard from him before. "Eleanor." He didn't wait for pleasantries. "I got an anonymous email this morning. Photos. Clarissa with some guy named Marcus. Hotel receipts, text messages, but that's not even the worst part." I stayed silent, letting him talk. "A federal prosecutor called me an hour ago. They want to question me about fraudulent documents. Eleanor, I swear to God, I didn't know the power of attorney was forged. Clarissa told me you signed it. She said you were helping us quietly for tax purposes." I thought back to their wedding 5 years ago. James in a gray suit looking at Clarissa like she hung the moon. They'd seemed so hopeful, so young. What had happened to those 2 kids? "James," I said carefully, "did you ever see me sign those documents?" His voice cracked. "No, Clarissa said Valerie witnessed you signing them at her office. I never questioned it because I wanted to believe we were finally building something. God, I'm such an idiot." "You need to tell the FBI the truth," I said. "If you were deceived, they need to know. But I knew we were using your corporate accounts." His words tumbled out desperate. "I knew it was a gray area. I'm guilty maybe not of forgery, but of complicity, of letting myself believe what I wanted to believe." "Then cooperate," I said quietly. "Tell them everything Clarissa told you versus what you actually witnessed. The FBI knows the difference between a mastermind and an accomplice." There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, trying to steady himself. "The texts between Clarissa and Marcus," he said finally, his voice hollow. "She was planning to leave me. Once the mansion closed, she was going to disappear. I wasn't her husband, Eleanor. I was her mark, just like you were her ATM. We were both victims of the same con artist. Despite everything, despite the restaurant scene, despite the forged documents, despite the chaos, I felt something unexpected. Sympathy. "James," I said softly, "I'm sorry. I know what that feels like." "I'm calling the FBI today," he said. "I'm telling them everything, and I'm filing for divorce. Emergency custody of Sophie." He paused. "Eleanor, thank you for not lumping me in with her completely. I was stupid, greedy, willfully blind, but I'm not evil, not like she is." "No," I agreed quietly. "You're not." We hung up. I sat there for a long moment staring at my phone, trying to process the strange alliance that was forming between me and the man who, just 2 days ago, I'd watched celebrate my humiliation at a restaurant. Life was strange that way. 2 hours later, Malcolm texted me. "Malcolm, 2:17 p.m. Eleanor. You will not believe what I just witnessed at Starbucks Peachtree." I called him immediately. "What happened?" "I was meeting a client," he said, breathless. Clarissa was there with Valerie, corner table looking stressed. Then James walked in like a freight train. "Oh no." "Oh yes." Malcolm's voice was almost gleeful. He walked straight up to their table and slammed his phone down. Photos of Clarissa and Marcus kissing. Everyone in the cafe turned to look. "What did he say?" Malcolm's voice shifted to a devastating impression of James's fury. 8 months, Clarissa. You've been sleeping with this guy for 8 months. You told me Eleanor approved the documents. You said Valerie witnessed her signature. You made me an accessory to forgery." I closed my eyes. In public, "Oh, honey, it gets better." Clarissa tried to say, "I was going to tell you," and James just lost it. "When after I went to prison for your crimes." My God. Then he threw down more photos. "And you were planning to leave me anyway. The mansion, the investor Marcus, it was all so you could run away with him. Everything was a lie." I could picture it. The crowded Starbucks. The shocked faces. Clarissa's carefully constructed life exploding in front of an audience, just like mine had exploded at that restaurant 2 nights ago. Poetic justice. What did Clarissa do? She tried to grab his arm, crying, saying it wasn't like that. James pulled away and said, and I quote, "I'm cooperating with the FBI, telling them you forged Eleanor's signature without my knowledge, about Marcus, about Bradley, about Valerie. I'm saving myself because you never cared about saving us." I heard the capital letters in Malcolm's voice, the finality. "Then what?" Clarissa lost it, started screaming. Something about how this was all Eleanor's fault, how you'd poisoned him against her. The barista threatened to call security. James just walked out, didn't look back once. And Clarissa. Malcolm's voice softened. "She's still here, mascara everywhere, calling someone, probably Marcus, over and over. He's not answering." Valerie slipped out during the chaos. "Eleanor, it's the most pathetic thing I've ever seen." I sat with that for a moment. My daughter, alone in a Starbucks, her marriage over, her con exposed, her lover ignoring her calls. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt sad. Not for Clarissa's pain, she'd earned every bit of it, but for what could have been, for the daughter I'd raised to be better than this, for the life she could have had if she hadn't chosen greed over integrity. "Malcolm," I said quietly, "thank you for letting me know." "Of course. Eleanor, are you okay?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I will be." I hung up and sat by the window watching the city move below, people going about their lives, building, creating, loving, living. While somewhere across town, my daughter's world was burning to ash. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, unknown, 2:43 p.m. "Eleanor, this is Valerie. We need to talk before James and Clarissa drag me into their mess. I have information about the $450,000 investor you need to hear. Meet me at my house in 1 hour. Come alone." Every instinct screamed trap, but I needed to know who had given Clarissa nearly $500,000. I needed to understand how deep this conspiracy went. And Valerie, my late husband's sister, the woman who'd betrayed me, might be the only person left who knew the truth. I grabbed my keys. 1 hour. Before I reveal who gave Clarissa the $450,000 and why, please comment 1 if you believe Valerie is telling the truth, or 2 if you think she's deceiving me. I need to know if you feel the same way I do. And a little reminder, this story incorporates fictional elements for educational purposes. If that bothers you, you can stop here. But if you want to know who's really behind this conspiracy, don't miss the next part. Valerie's house was a modest ranch in the suburbs paid for with the life insurance money when my husband died 10 years ago. I parked on the street and texted Malcolm my location before walking to her door. I thought about the funeral, Valerie sobbing, me standing beside her helping her navigate the paperwork, the finances, the unbearable weight of losing someone too young. I'd helped her because she was my brother's wife, because family mattered. This was how she repaid his memory. Valerie opened the door, looking wrecked. Mascara smudged, hair unwashed, hands trembling. "Eleanor," she said immediately, her voice breaking, "you need to know I never wanted to hurt you. Clarissa manipulated me." I stepped inside without a word, my phone already recording in my pocket. "You helped her forge legal documents," I said coldly. "That's conspiracy, Valerie, not manipulation." She crumbled, led me to the living room and collapsed onto the couch. "I was desperate," she said, tears streaming. "Medical bills from last year's surgery, credit card debt. I couldn't keep up. Clarissa offered me $15,000 just for witnessing some paperwork. She said you'd already approved it but needed a notary. She made it sound so simple. And the $50,000, Valerie flinched. She promised me a commission when the mansion closed, said it was a legitimate real estate deal, that you were helping her quietly for tax reasons. And you believed her." "I wanted to." She looked up at me desperate. "Eleanor, I was drowning. My mortgage is 3 months behind. The bank sent foreclosure notices. When Clarissa said she could help, that we could help each other, I convinced myself it was harmless paperwork." I sat down across from her, my face expressionless. "Who gave Clarissa the $450,000? Valerie took a shaky breath. "The investor, the one who was supposed to fund the Buckhead mansion." She paused. "It was Bradley Mitchell." The room tilted. "Bradley Mitchell," I repeated slowly. "My former business partner, the one I bought out 3 years ago." Valerie nodded miserably. "Bradley's hated you since the buyout. He thought you stole the company from him even though it was a legal transaction. When I mentioned in passing that your daughter needed money, he saw an opportunity." My blood went cold. "Go on." "Bradley offered Clarissa the $450,000 knowing it was probably fraud. He wanted it to fail." "Why?" "Because if the deal succeeded, he'd own Maple Grove and hurt you financially. If it failed, you'd be implicated in your daughter's crimes. Either way, your reputation would be destroyed." Valerie's voice dropped to a whisper. "He used Clarissa to attack you, Eleanor. It was never about the money. It was revenge." I sat very still, processing. Bradley Mitchell. The man who'd spent 18 months trying to oust me from the company we'd built together. The man who'd spread rumors about my business practices, tried to poach my clients, filed frivolous lawsuits after I bought him out. The man I'd thought I was finally rid of. "So this wasn't just greed," I said quietly. "Bradley weaponized my daughter against me." "Yes," Valerie wiped her eyes, "and Clarissa never realized she was a pawn. She thought Bradley was a sophisticated investor who believed in her vision." "Why are you telling me this now?" Valerie's face hardened. "Because Bradley's planning to sue you for the $450,000. He's claiming you interfered with a legitimate business deal. He's already drafted the paperwork. And he's going to use me as a witness unless—" She trailed off. "Unless what?" "Unless I testify that he knew it was fraud from the beginning. That he gave Clarissa the money specifically to hurt you." She met my eyes. "But I need immunity, Eleanor. I need you to tell the FBI I cooperated. Because if I go down for this, I lose everything." I looked at her for a long moment. She was offering to burn Bradley and Clarissa to save herself. Classic rat behavior. But she was also offering evidence that could destroy the man who'd tried to destroy me. "I'll tell Silverman you cooperated," I said finally. "But understand this, Valerie. You betrayed my brother's memory. Even if you avoid prison, you're dead to me. She nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. I know. I'm so sorry. I was drowning in debt, and Clarissa made it sound so easy, and Stop. I stood up. I don't want your excuses. I walked toward the door. Eleanor, wait. I turned. Valerie's face was ashen. There's one more thing. About Marcus. What about him? He's not just a con artist. She swallowed hard. He's Bradley's nephew. The room spun. Marcus Holloway is Bradley's sister's son. Bradley sent him to seduce Clarissa, to make her desperate enough to commit fraud. Valerie's voice shook. The affair, the promises, the investment deal, it was all coordinated. Eleanor, your daughter, never had a chance. This was an orchestrated takedown from the beginning. I couldn't breathe. Marcus wasn't just some random scammer who'd latched onto my daughter. He'd been planted, sent by Bradley to manipulate Clarissa into destroying herself and me in the process. Does Clarissa know? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. No. She thinks Marcus loves her, thinks he's going to run away with her once this blows over. Valerie shook her head. She has no idea she was the target of a revenge plot that had nothing to do with her. I stood frozen in Valerie's doorway, trying to process. My former business partner had orchestrated my daughter's affair, her fraud, her downfall, all to hurt me. Clarissa was guilty. That hadn't changed. But she'd also been a pawn in a game she never knew she was playing. Eleanor. Valerie's voice was small. What are you going to do? I looked at her one last time. I'm going to destroy Bradley Mitchell. I walked out, got in my car, and sat in the driver's seat with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Then I called Arthur Silverman. I need you to conference in the FBI, I said when he answered. I just found out who's really behind this, and it's bigger than my daughter. I drove home from Valerie's in a daze, my mind still reeling from the revelation about Bradley and Marcus. But when I stepped into my building's lobby, the concierge rushed over, holding an envelope marked Medical Emergency in red letters. My stomach dropped. I tore it open right there in the lobby. Atlanta Memorial Hospital Emergency Room Report date, December 27, 2025. Patient Clarissa Davis. Age 35. Admission time, 2:47 p.m. Diagnosis. Acute cardiac event. Suspected myocardial infarction. Recommended treatment. Emergency cardiac catheterization within 48 hours. Estimated cost $87. 000. Insurance status. Uninsured. Family financial assistance urgently needed. Attending physician Dr. Michael Patterson, MD NPI 12345678890. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, the fraud, the lies, my mother's instinct kicked in. What if it's real? What if she dies? My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. A voicemail was already waiting. I pressed play. Clarissa's voice weak and breathy. Mom, I'm at the hospital. They're saying something about my heart. I'm so scared. I know you're angry, but please, I can't afford the surgery. My insurance lapsed when you cut me from the corporate policy. Please, I don't want to die. Call me back. My vision blurred. Then my phone buzzed. A text from James. James 5:12 p.m. Did you get the hospital papers? Clarissa sent me a copy too. I don't know what to do. We're getting divorced, but I don't want her to die. Can you cover the surgery? I stared at the message, then at the hospital report. And something in my brain, the part that had spent 30 years in real estate negotiating deals, spotting forgeries, started to itch. The timing was too convenient. The language didn't sound like medical terminology, and Clarissa had always been a gifted actress when desperate. I thought back to 4th grade when she'd faked stomach pain to avoid a math test. The school nurse had almost believed her until I'd checked her homework folder and found the blank test prep sheet. Always a performer when desperate. I pulled up my contacts and dialed Dr. Rebecca Martinez, my personal physician for 15 years. Rebecca, I said when she answered. I need a professional opinion. Can I send you a document? Of course, Eleanor. What is it? A hospital report. I need to know if it's legitimate. I forwarded the scan. She called back 10 minutes later. "Eleanor, this is fake." Relief and rage hit me simultaneously. "You're sure?" "Positive. The header font is wrong for Atlanta Memorial. The medical terminology is off. No ER doctor would write suspected myocardial infarction without EKG readings or troponin levels. And look at the physician's signature. What about it? It's a stamp, not a handwritten signature. Hospitals never stamp attending physician names on emergency reports. They're always signed by hand for legal liability. Anything else?" I looked up the NPI number. That's the physician ID. It belongs to a retired cardiologist in Florida who hasn't practiced in 6 years. And the date stamp format looks like Microsoft Word, not a hospital EMR system. My hands clenched around the phone. "Thank you, Rebecca." "Eleanor, is everything okay?" "No, but it will be." I hung up and immediately called Atlanta Memorial's patient information line. "I'm calling to inquire about a patient admitted this afternoon. Clarissa Davis, Davis," the operator typed. "I'm not showing any patient by that name admitted in the last 48 hours. Can you double-check emergency room admissions?" More typing. "No, ma'am, no Clarissa Davis in our system." "Thank you." I hung up. The relief I should have felt never came. Instead, white-hot rage filled my chest. My own daughter, had forged hospital documents to scam $87,000 from me by faking a heart attack. Not for surgery, for legal fees. To hire lawyers to defend her fraud charges. She'd weaponized my maternal instinct, bet on the fact that no mother could ignore a dying child no matter how much that child had betrayed her. And she'd almost won. I took screenshots of everything, the fake report, the verification from Dr. Martinez, the hospital's confirmation that Clarissa was never admitted. Then I called James. "The medical emergency is fake," I said without preamble. "Clarissa forged hospital documents. I verified with my personal physician and the hospital directly. She's not sick." Silence. Then, Jesus Christ, is there anything she won't lie about? Apparently not. "I'm forwarding this to my divorce lawyer," he said, his voice hollow, "and to Silverman. This has to be another federal charge, right? Forging medical documents. Medical fraud. Mail fraud if she sent it through the postal service. Wire fraud if she emailed it. She emailed it to me." He confirmed. "God, Eleanor, I almost wired her the money. I was sitting here feeling guilty about divorcing her while she was dying and—" His voice cracked. "She played both of us." "Yes," I said quietly. "She did." I hung up and dialed Clarissa. She answered on the second ring, her voice weak and trembling. "Mom, did you get my message about the surgery?" "I got your forged documents," I said, my voice ice cold. "I also spoke with Dr. Martinez and Atlanta Memorial. You're not sick." "You're a liar, adding another federal charge to your growing list." Her voice changed instantly, strong, furious. "You called the hospital. You couldn't just help me. You faked a heart attack to steal $87,000 from me." "I'm desperate," she screamed. "Bradley's threatening to sue me. Marcus won't answer my calls. James is divorcing me. The FBI keeps calling. I needed that surgery money to hire a defense attorney. You destroyed my life." "No, Clarissa," I said quietly. "You destroyed your own life. I just stopped funding it." I hung up, forwarded the fake documents, Dr. Martinez's analysis, and the hospital verification to Silverman, with a subject line, "Add medical fraud to the charges." Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window watching the city lights blur through tears I refused to let fall. My phone rang. Silverman. His voice was grave. "Eleanor, we have a bigger problem. Bradley Mitchell just filed a lawsuit against you. He's claiming wrongful interference and theft of the $450,000. He's alleging you illegally froze corporate funds that were promised as collateral. His lawyers are very good. We need to meet first thing tomorrow morning." I closed my eyes. Of course. Bradley wasn't waiting for the FBI. He was attacking first, trying to flip the narrative, make me the villain. "What time?" I asked. 8 a.m. My office. Bring everything. I'll be there. I hung up and looked out at Atlanta's skyline. The city that had once felt like home now felt like a battlefield, and I was running out of allies. On the morning of December 28th, I sat across from Arthur Silverman in his law office, a 3-inch stack of legal documents between us. Bradley Mitchell wasn't playing games, he was going for everything. I thought back 3 years to the day we'd dissolved our partnership. Bradley had stood in the conference room of the company we'd built together, his face purple with rage, and screamed, "You'll regret cutting me out, Eleanor. I'll make sure of it." I'd walked away that day believing he was just bitter. I'd been wrong. He'd been plotting. Silverman opened the complaint and began reading, his voice grim. Bradley's suing for the $450,000 plus $2 million in punitive damages. He's claiming this was a legitimate investment, that you froze the funds illegally due to a personal vendetta, that your interference cost him a lucrative real estate opportunity, and that you were initially complicit in the deal but turned on him to avoid liability. That's insane, I said. It gets worse. He's demanding a criminal investigation into your corporate practices, alleging misuse of company funds, fraudulent accounting, obstruction of justice. Eleanor, he's trying to put you in prison. Jennifer Blake, Silverman's associate, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in complex litigation, leaned forward. And the paperwork looks clean. Bradley has loan documents, investment agreements, communication logs. If we can't prove his intent was malicious from the start, a jury might believe him. I felt my jaw tighten. He knew it was fraud. He orchestrated the entire thing to attack me through my daughter. "Can you prove that?" Silverman asked quietly. I opened my briefcase and started laying documents on the table. "Yes," I said, "I can prove exactly that." The first thing I pulled out was Valerie's written statement notarized the night before. Silverman scanned it, his eyebrows rising. She's admitting Bradley knew the power of attorney was forged, that he recruited his nephew Marcus to seduce your daughter. Yes, she was there when Bradley explained his plan. He wanted Clarissa desperate enough to commit fraud so I'd be implicated. Valerie was supposed to provide legitimacy as a notary. Bradley promised her $50,000 when it all fell apart, and I was facing charges. Jennifer took the statement and started highlighting sections. This establishes motive and premeditation. Excellent. Next came David Reynolds's full investigative report. Marcus Holloway, 38 years old, son of Bradley Mitchell's younger sister. 3 prior fraud convictions in 2 states. Timeline evidence showing Bradley had introduced Marcus to Clarissa 8 months ago at a real estate networking event. Surveillance photos of Bradley and Marcus meeting throughout the affair, coordinating the con. "Jesus," Jennifer muttered, flipping through the surveillance photos. "This is premeditated conspiracy." "There's more," I said. I'd hired a digital forensics expert yesterday. He'd recovered deleted emails from Clarissa's laptop, the one I'd purchased for her 2 years ago, which meant I technically had administrative access for technical support purposes. Legally gray, but Silverman had assured me it would hold up in court as protective monitoring of corporate assets. One email stood out. From Bradley to Clarissa, dated November 3rd, 2025. "Don't worry about your mother's signature. Family members sign for each other all the time in real estate. It's completely normal. Just make sure the notary is someone you trust." He coached her, Silverman said slowly. He told her how to commit forgery. Yes. Jennifer was practically vibrating with excitement. "Do you have James's cooperation? He contacted the FBI on the 27th voluntarily. He's providing a timeline of everything Clarissa told him versus what actually happened. He wasn't present during the forgery, only Clarissa and Valerie. He's also disclosing the affair and testifying that Bradley coached Clarissa on how to deceive him." I paused. James started tracking Clarissa's phone 3 weeks ago when he suspected something was wrong. He has location data showing she was meeting Marcus and Bradley. He's willing to testify against all of them in exchange for a plea deal. Silverman and Jennifer exchanged a look. "Eleanor." Jennifer said carefully, "This is a RICO case, organized crime. Wire fraud, mail fraud, identity, theft, conspiracy. We're not just defending. We're countersuiting and bringing in federal prosecutors." Silverman nodded. With this evidence, we can destroy Bradley, but Eleanor, you need to understand this will obliterate your daughter. Clarissa will face serious prison time. Are you ready for that? The room went quiet. I thought of Clarissa at 5 years old, her hand in mine as we walked through the park. At 15, graduating middle school with honors. At 20, excited about her first job. When had I lost her? Or had she ever really been the person I thought she was? Arthur. I said quietly, my daughter is a 35-year-old woman who made choices. She chose fraud, adultery. She faked a terminal illness to manipulate me. I didn't make those choices for her. I won't go to prison to protect her from consequences. Use everything. Silverman studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right, here's our strategy. We file a countersuit by end of business today. We forward all evidence to the FBI's wire fraud division. We get a restraining order preventing Bradley from contacting you. And we prepare for Clarissa's arrest, which is now inevitable. Jennifer pulled out her laptop and started drafting. We'll allege conspiracy, fraud, attempted extortion. Bradley weaponized his nephew and your daughter against you. We'll show the jury exactly what he did. I watched her type, feeling something strange settle in my chest. Not peace, but certainty. I'd spent 30 years protecting Clarissa from consequences, bailing her out, believing that love meant endless second chances. But love, without accountability, wasn't love. It was enabling, and I was done. Jennifer looked up from her screen. Mrs. Davis, I've practiced family law for 15 years. I've never seen a case like this. You documented everything. Every transaction, every conversation, every manipulation. You're either the most paranoid person alive or I'm a woman who survived 40 years in a male-dominated real estate industry by never trusting anyone completely. I finished. Not even family. She smiled grimly. Well, it's about to save your life. Silverman stood. We'll have the countersuit filed by 5 p.m. FBI meeting scheduled for Monday morning. Eleanor, go home. Get some rest. The next few weeks are going to be brutal. I gathered my things and headed for the parking garage. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Unknown number. You made a big mistake, Eleanor. Federal charges mean the investigation goes both ways. I have evidence too. Evidence about your business practices. Drop the lawsuit or I'll expose you. I stared at the message. Bradley. Threatening to fabricate evidence. Trying blackmail as a last resort. I forwarded the message to Silverman with a single word, extortion. His response came immediately. Screenshot everything. That just gave us another felony charge. I got in my car and sat there for a moment, engine running, hands on the steering wheel. Bradley had spent 3 years planning his revenge. He'd weaponized my daughter, destroyed my family, tried to ruin my reputation. And now he was threatening to fabricate crimes. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. I pulled out of the garage and headed home, already planning my next move. Because Bradley thought this was a war. He had no idea he'd already lost. That afternoon at exactly 2 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, 2 agents in dark suits, FBI badges clipped to their belts. I'd been waiting for this. I thought back to those true crime documentaries I used to watch with Michael on Sunday nights. He'd always said, if the FBI shows up, call your lawyer first. I'd remembered. I pulled out my phone and dialed Silverman. They're here, I said when he answered. Don't answer anything without me present. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I opened the door. The agents were both in their 40s, professional, composed, radiating the kind of quiet authority that comes from years of complex cases. Mrs. Eleanor Davis, the woman asked, holding up her credentials. I'm Special Agent Monica Torres, FBI Wire Fraud Division. This is Special Agent David Park, Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like to speak with you about an ongoing investigation. My attorney is on his way, I said calmly. Please come in. Can I offer you coffee while we wait? Agent Torres's eyebrow raised, slightly impressed, or amused, I couldn't tell. That would be fine, thank you. I led them to the dining room, made coffee, and sat across from them in professional silence until Silverman arrived, 14 minutes later, slightly breathless. Arthur Silverman representing Mrs. Davis. Shall we begin? Agent Torres opened a leather portfolio and pulled out a digital recorder. Mrs. Davis, we're investigating a multi-party fraud conspiracy. Your attorney has provided extensive evidence. We need your official statement. For the next 90 minutes, I walked them through everything. 30 years of bailing out Clarissa, the forged power of attorney, Christmas Eve confrontation, the account freeze, David Reynolds' investigation, Valerie's confession, Bradley's involvement, the fake medical emergency. Agent Park took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Did you know Clarissa was receiving money from Bradley Mitchell? Not until the private investigator revealed it. Did you ever encourage the sale of 428 Maple Grove Road? No. I've owned it through my corporation for 7 years. Clarissa had no legal right to sell it. Why did you freeze the $450,000? I looked him directly in the eye. Because it came from fraud. As CFO of EH Estates, I'm legally required to prevent illicit transactions. The emotional aspect is separate. So, you're saying this wasn't personal retaliation. I'm saying I froze the funds to protect my corporation from being used for criminal purposes. Whether it was also personally painful is irrelevant to the legal obligation. Agent Torres studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Mrs. Davis, based on the evidence you and your attorney provided, combined with our own investigation, we're pursuing federal charges against 4 individuals. My stomach dropped. Clarissa Davis, wire fraud, forgery, medical fraud. Potential exposure 8 to 12 years federal prison. 8 to 12 years, my daughter, federal prison. Bradley Mitchell, conspiracy RICO violations, attempted extortion. Potential exposure 15 to 20 years. Marcus Holloway, conspiracy identity theft fraud across state lines. Potential exposure 5 to 8 years. Valerie Hayes, conspiracy, reduced charges pending her cooperation agreement, likely probation if she testifies. The room felt very cold. Mrs. Davis. Agent Torres's voice was gentler now. Are you all right? My daughter is going to federal prison, I said quietly. Yes, most likely. She made choices. Silverman set his hand on my shoulder. You didn't make them for her. Agent Torres leaned forward. Mrs. Davis, I've worked financial crimes for 18 years. I've seen dozens of families destroyed by greed. Your daughter chose fraud. You chose honesty. You did the right thing by not covering for her. I nodded, unable to speak. Agent Park cleared his throat. We'll be executing arrest warrants soon. I can't discuss operational timelines for security reasons, but federal court dockets are public. Arrest records will appear within hours of execution. Will you notify me when the arrests happen? I asked. We don't notify witnesses beforehand, Torres said. It compromises security, but your attorney can monitor the docket. She paused, her expression serious. Mrs. Davis, this is going public. Bradley Mitchell is a known figure in Atlanta real estate. Clarissa's arrest will make the news. Your name will be in headlines as the mother who turned in her daughter. Are you prepared for that? I thought of the restaurant, the stairs, the whispers. I've survived worse than media scrutiny, I said. I survived betrayal by my own child. Torres nodded, respect in her eyes. Then you'll survive this too. After they left, Silverman stayed for another hour going over what to expect. Media statements, public records, the inevitable parade of journalists and former colleagues with questions. Eleanor, he said finally, you should know this will be brutal. People will judge you. They'll say you should have protected your daughter no matter what. They'll call you cold, heartless. Let them, I said quietly. I know the truth. He squeezed my hand and left. I stood by the window watching the city lights begin to twinkle as dusk fell. Soon my daughter would be arrested. The entire city would know. Business partners would gossip. Clients would question my judgment. Strangers would debate my choices on social media. But for the first time in 30 years, I wouldn't lie awake wondering what disaster I'd have to pay for tomorrow, what crisis I'd have to solve, what lie I'd have to swallow to keep the peace. That was worth more than reputation. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against all logic, I answered, "Mom." Clarissa's voice. Small, broken. Nothing like the confident woman who'd sneered at me 5 days ago in that restaurant. The FBI called. She said, her words tumbling out. "They want me to come in for questioning tomorrow at 8 a.m. Mom, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. Could you come sit with me tonight? I know I don't deserve it. I know I said horrible things, but you're still my mother." I stood there, tears streaming down my face, staring at my reflection in the darkening window. What do you say to your daughter the night before she's likely arrested? What comfort do you offer someone who betrayed you, stole from you, lied to you, but who you still, despite everything, love, Clarissa? I said finally, my voice breaking. Please, Mom, please don't leave me alone tonight. I'm at the Marriott on Peachtree, room 847. I have nowhere else to go. James changed the locks. Valerie won't answer. You're all I have left. My hand trembled on the phone. Please. I closed my eyes. 30 years of enabling. 30 years of choosing her over myself. One more night wouldn't change anything, or would it? I'll think about it, I said quietly. I'll let you know. I hung up before she could respond, and stood there in the growing darkness facing the hardest decision a mother can make. Do you comfort your child in their darkest hour, even when they've earned that darkness through their own choices, even when every instinct screams that showing up will only restart the cycle? You've finally broken. My phone sat silent in my hand. Room 847, 847. The numbers burned in my mind. I hadn't slept. At 6:15 on the morning of December 29th, I was already dressed, coffee in hand, when my phone buzzed. Breaking news alert. Breaking Atlanta businessman, arrested in federal fraud case. My hand trembled. It had begun. I thought back 40 years to the day I'd opened EH Estates with nothing but a real estate license and a dream. I'd never imagined building an empire would cost me my daughter. By 8 a.m., the first wave of news coverage hit. Bradley Mitchell arrested at his home at 6 that morning, standard procedure for white-collar criminals. Charges: wire fraud, conspiracy, RICO violations. Taken into custody without resistance. Search warrants executed at both his office and residence. My name wasn't mentioned initially. The prosecutors were protecting their witness. Malcolm texted at 8:23 a.m. news vans everywhere around Mitchell Properties. Employees showing up to find their boss in handcuffs. It's chaos. I sat at my dining table, scrolling through coverage, feeling strangely numb. This was what I'd wanted, what I'd fought for, justice. So why did it feel so hollow? Silverman called at 9:15. Arrests happened this morning, he said without preamble. Bradley at 6 a.m., Marcus in Tennessee at 7 local time, and Eleanor, Clarissa surrendered voluntarily at the FBI field office at 8. No resistance. Walked in with a public defender. My breath caught. She surrendered. She didn't run. Voluntary surrender helps with bail consideration. Smart move. She's being processed now. Arraignment this afternoon. Did she ask about me? Silverman's voice gentled. Her lawyer said she told the agents, my mother was right to report this. I understand, that's all. I closed my eyes. Even now, even after everything, my daughter could still surprise me. By afternoon, my phone was a battlefield. Interview requests from 3 local stations. Business partners calling with careful questions. Friends texting support. Strangers sending hate mail to my corporate email. The local news anchor's voice drifted from my television in a stunning family drama. Real estate mogul Eleanor Davis cooperated with the FBI to arrest her own daughter in a $450,000 fraud scheme. Malcolm called, reading me social media reactions. Support. Eleanor Davis is a hero. Refused to enable criminal behavior. #boundaries. Criticism. What kind of mother sends her child to prison? There had to be another way. My colleague Sarah called her voice warm. What you did took extraordinary courage, Eleanor. I'm proud to know you. But there were others. An email from a former client. Given recent troubles and questions about your judgment, we're seeking new representation. The professional cost was beginning to show. At 4:30 p.m., Silverman texted Clarissa arraigned. Bail set at $100,000. She doesn't have it. She'll stay in county jail until trial. Could be 6 to 8 months. I stared at that message for a long time. I could post bail. I had the money. It would take one phone call. But posting bail meant enabling again, meant cushioning the consequences, meant sending the message that Eleanor would always catch her when she fell. I texted back, "I'm not posting bail." Silverman's response came quickly. "I understand." Pre-trial detention might be the wake-up call she needs. My hand shook as I set down the phone. 6 to 8 months. My daughter would spend 6 to 8 months in county jail before her trial even began, because I chose not to help her. The right choice. The devastating choice. That evening, the news covered James's plea deal. The anchor explained, James Davis, Clarissa's husband, has accepted a plea agreement misdemeanor fraud, $25,000, fine, 2 years probation, 200 hours community service. In exchange for his testimony, prosecutors noted Mr. Davis was deceived by his wife and has cooperated fully. His case reflects the difference between a co-conspirator and a manipulated victim. I felt a strange relief. James had been greedy and willfully blind, but he'd been Clarissa's victim too. He deserved a second chance, unlike Bradley, who was looking at 15 to 20 years. Unlike Marcus, who'd fled to Tennessee only to be caught at his mother's house. Unlike my daughter, who would face 8 to 12 years if convicted. I turned off my phone, sat in my darkening penthouse as the city lights began to twinkle below. The silence was complete. No crisis calls from Clarissa. No emergency requests for money. No drama, no chaos, no late-night rescue missions. Just quiet. I whispered to the empty room, "I'm sorry, Clarissa, but I had to let you fall this time. It's the only way you'll learn to stand up." The city lights blurred as tears filled my eyes. I'd done the right thing. I knew I had, so why did it hurt so much? 3 days later, on January 2nd, 2026, a letter arrived via regular mail. Return address, Federal Detention Center. Clarissa's handwriting. I held it for 20 minutes before opening it, terrified of what poison might be inside. But when I finally unfolded the single page, there were only 6 words written in shaky handwriting. "Thank you for letting me go." I read it 5 times. Then I folded it carefully, placed it in my desk drawer, and walked to the window. The sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere across the city, my daughter was in a cell wearing an orange jumpsuit, eating cafeteria food, sleeping on a thin mattress. And for the first time in her life, she was taking full responsibility for her choices. It had taken 35 years, federal charges, the loss of everything she'd built her identity on. But finally, Clarissa was growing up. I pressed my hand against the cold window glass and let myself cry, not for what was, but for what could finally be. 6 months. That's how long federal justice took to grind through Bradley Mitchell's conspiracy. It was late June 2026, and I sat in the gallery of the federal courthouse in a navy suit, watching my daughter stand before a judge in an orange jumpsuit. I thought back to Clarissa's college graduation when I'd served jury duty in this same courthouse, and imagined someday watching her argue cases as a lawyer. I never imagined the next time would be to hear her sentenced. Judge Patricia Hamilton presided, her gray hair pulled back, her expression grave. This was her courtroom, and she'd seen enough fraud cases to recognize genuine remorse from performance. Bradley was called first. After a 3-week trial, the jury had convicted him on all counts. The prosecutor recommended 18 years. His attorney argued health problems, first offense, age 55. Judge Hamilton wasn't impressed. "Mr. Mitchell, you orchestrated a sophisticated conspiracy using your former partner's daughter as a weapon. This wasn't a crime of impulse or desperation. This was calculated revenge." She paused. "The court sentences you to 15 years federal prison, $2.3 million in restitution, 3 years supervised release." Bradley's face went from shock to rage. He turned toward me in the gallery, mouthed something I didn't catch. Maybe, "This is your fault." I didn't flinch. Marcus was next. He'd pleaded guilty, testified against Bradley, begged for mercy. Judge Hamilton acknowledged his cooperation, but noted the betrayal of his own wife and children while seducing Clarissa. 4 years federal prison, $50,000 restitution. Marcus broke down crying, whispered, "I'm sorry," toward the gallery. I didn't acknowledge it. Valerie had immunity in exchange for testimony, but Judge Hamilton made clear that avoiding prison didn't mean avoiding consequences. "Ms. Hayes, you escaped incarceration because you cooperated, but you aided a serious crime against family. 5 years, probation, 500 hours, community service, $15,000 restitution to Mrs. Davis." Valerie looked at me, shame written across her face. I looked back expressionless. We'd never speak again. Then it was Clarissa's turn. She stepped forward and I barely recognized her. Her hair was natural, no makeup, she'd lost weight. Her posture was different, less arrogant, more grounded. 6 months in county jail had changed her. The prosecutor acknowledged multiple felonies but noted genuine remorse, cooperation, acceptance of responsibility. "We recommend 7 years. Clarissa's public defender countered. "Your Honor, Ms. Davis has spent 6 months in county detention awaiting trial. She's completed her GED substance abuse treatment vocational training. She's become a different person. We ask for leniency, 3 years time served credited." Judge Hamilton looked at Clarissa. "Ms. Davis, do you wish to speak?" Clarissa stood trembling. "Your Honor, I have no excuses. I committed crimes. I hurt people, my husband, my aunt, but most of all, my mother. I spent 35 years thinking the world owed me something because I was Eleanor Davis's daughter. I was wrong." Her voice strengthened. "Prison is where I belong right now. It's where I need to be to become the person I should have been all along. I'm sorry to everyone I hurt." She turned and looked at me for the first time. "Mom, I know you're here. Thank you for not bailing me out. Thank you for letting me face this. I understand now why you did it. I love you." Tears rolled down my face, the first I'd shed in that courtroom. Judge Hamilton studied Clarissa for a long moment. "I see genuine remorse. I see rehabilitation efforts. 5 years federal prison credit for 6 months, served 3 years supervised release, $450,000 restitution to E.H. Estates, mandatory continued treatment. Use this time wisely, Ms. Davis." Clarissa nodded, her own tears falling. "Thank you, Your Honor, I will." Outside the courthouse, media chaos erupted. Silverman shielded me, read a brief statement. "Mrs. Davis is relieved that justice has been served. She hopes all defendants use their sentences for rehabilitation. No questions." As we pushed toward the parking garage, someone called my name. James. He looked different too. Thinner. Tired, but lighter somehow. "Eleanor, I wanted to say I'm sorry for my part in this. I visited Clarissa last month. We talked, really talked. She's different. Prison might actually save her life. Are you two?" "No, divorce is final, but I don't hate her anymore. I feel sorry for her. Sorry for both of us wasting years chasing things that didn't matter. What will you do now? I've got a job, a real one, accounting for a nonprofit. Salaries $52,000 sounds pathetic compared to pretending to be a millionaire, but it's honest money. I sleep better." He extended his hand. "Take care, Eleanor." We shook hands. He walked away, shoulders straight. That evening alone in my penthouse, I reflected on the past 6 months. I'd lost 3 major clients. My revenue dropped 20% initially. But 5 new clients had sought me out specifically because of the scandal. If she's principled enough to report her own daughter, I trust her with my money. Net result business up 15%. Personally, life was quiet, peaceful. No midnight crisis calls, no emergencies to solve. I'd even started dating someone I'd met at an industry conference, nothing serious yet, but the possibility felt strange and hopeful. I pulled out Clarissa's letter from last week and read it again. "Mom, I'm at federal prison in Alabama. It's hard, really hard, but I'm learning things, taking business classes, reading books, making friends with women who have real lives, real struggles. For the first time, I feel like I'm earning something instead of being given it. I'll be 40 when I get out. Maybe that's not too late to start over. Maybe we could get coffee someday. I'm not expecting anything, just coffee. Love, Clarissa. P.S. The commissary money helps so much. Thank you. I sat at my desk and wrote back. Clarissa, I'll be 68 when you get out. If we have coffee, then it will be the first honest conversation we've ever had. I look forward to meeting the woman you're becoming. Love, Mom. I sealed the envelope, set it aside to mail tomorrow. My phone rang. Unknown number. 6 months of media attention had made me cautious. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. A young voice, trembling, female. Mrs. Davis. This is Sophie. I'm Clarissa's daughter, your granddaughter. I'm 13 now. I know you don't know me, but I was wondering, could we maybe meet? I have a lot of questions about my mom, about what happened, about you. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly. Sophie. The one person in this entire disaster who was truly innocent. The one relationship I could still get right. Sophie, I said softly. Yes, I'd like that very much. When? I met Sophie Davis at a quiet coffee shop in Midtown, far from my penthouse and the suburban house where she lived with James. She looked exactly like Clarissa at 13, dark hair, intelligent eyes, hands nervously folding a napkin. I'd only seen Sophie twice before as a newborn, then at 5. Clarissa had kept her away, claiming I was too busy. Now I understood she was protecting her secrets, not protecting Sophie. James dropped her at the entrance, gave me a small wave through the window, and drove away. Sophie approached, slowly extended her hand formally. Hello, Grandmother Eleanor. Call me Eleanor. Or L.A., whatever feels comfortable. We ordered tea for me, hot chocolate for her, and sat in awkward silence. Finally, Sophie spoke. I know what Mom did. Dad told me. I also read the news online. She looked at me directly. Mom always said you were cold, distant, that you chose work over family, but the news said something different. I chose my words carefully. Your mother and I have a complicated relationship. I love her deeply, but I also had to protect myself from being hurt repeatedly. Sophie nodded. Dad explained boundaries. He said sometimes loving someone means letting them face consequences instead of rescuing them. Is that what you did? Yes. Exactly that. She pulled out a small notebook. I wrote questions. Can I ask them? Anything. Did you ever love my mom? More than anything, I said, throat tight. When she was born, I promised to give her every opportunity I never had. I think I loved her too much, so much I didn't see I was hurting her by making everything too easy. Why didn't you want to know me? The truth hurt. Your mother kept you away. Said I was too harsh. I tried visiting when you were little, but she always had excuses. After a while, I stopped trying. I'm sorry, I should have fought harder. Tears filled Sophie's eyes. She said you were too busy. I was busy. I worked constantly, but I was never too busy for family. I just wasn't welcome. Do you think my mom is a bad person? I considered carefully. I think she made very bad choices. But people are more complicated than good or bad. Your mother struggled with entitlement and poor judgment. But I saw her last letter from prison. She's trying. There's hope. Sophie wiped her eyes. I'm visiting her next month. First time. I'm scared. That's very brave. Your mom needs to see you, to remember what she's fighting to come back to. Last question, her voice small. Are you happy she's in prison? No, I'm heartbroken, but I'm glad she's finally facing reality. Prison might save her life. Sophie hesitated. Can I tell you something I haven't told anyone? Of course. I used to hear things when I was younger. Mom on the phone about money, about forging your signature, about Marcus. I didn't understand it all, but I knew something was wrong. I feel guilty. Like if I'd told someone you wouldn't have been hurt. I reached across and took her hand. Sophie, listen. You were a child. None of this is your fault. Children are not responsible for their parents' choices. She started crying. I just feel like I should have protected you. You are protecting me. You're here now asking hard questions trying to understand the truth. That's courage. Your mother spent 35 years avoiding truth. You're 13 and already braver than she was. Sophie took a deep breath. One more question. Anything. When Mom gets out in 5 years, I'll be 18. Dad says I get to choose my relationship. I want to give her a chance, but I also want boundaries. Will you teach me about boundaries, about business, about how to be strong like you? My heart broke open. This was the question I'd waited my whole life to hear. Sophie, I would be honored. How about coffee once a month? Just you and me. I'll teach you everything I know about building something real. No shortcuts. Authentic success. Sophie smiled a real smile. I'd like that. But Elle, I don't want to be rich like you. I want to be strong like you. There's a difference. I laughed through tears. That's the smartest thing I've ever heard. We walked outside into golden afternoon light. James pulled up. Sophie hugged me, our first physical contact. See you next month. Next month. I'll teach you about real estate investing. She grinned. Cool. I'll teach you about TikTok. We both laughed. I walked to my car alone, thinking about what I'd lost and gained. Lost a daughter to prison, a sister-in-law to betrayal, the illusion of a perfect family. Gained self-respect boundaries, peace, integrity. And unexpectedly, Sophie. I spent 30 years trying to build a legacy with money and property. But real legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who you leave behind. Maybe Sophie would carry forward the strength I should have taught Clarissa. My phone buzzed. Sophie. Hi, Elle. I told Dad I had a really good time. Also looked up your company online. You're kind of a badass. See you next month. I typed back, only kind of see you next month. Bring questions. At home, I poured wine and stood by the window looking out at the city lights. I whispered, Clarissa, wherever you are tonight in that cell, I hope you're finding yourself. When you get out, there will be a place for you in our lives, but only if you've truly changed. Sophie deserves a mother, and I deserve a daughter who sees me as more than a bank account. My phone rang. My boyfriend. Dinner tomorrow. I smiled. Yes, I'm free. The word hung in the air. Free. After 63 years, I finally understood what it meant. If you've followed my story to the end, you know this family drama story taught me what no business degree ever could love without boundaries is destruction in disguise. For 30 years, I played God, rescuing, enabling, bankrolling my daughter's every mistake. I thought unconditional love meant never saying no. I was wrong. God teaches us to love with wisdom, not blind indulgence. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasing consequences. It means allowing growth through pain. Don't be like me. Don't wait 3 decades to draw a line. Don't sacrifice your peace for someone else's chaos. Every family drama story I've heard since confirms this enabling hurts more than it helps. Here's my truth. Family revenge stories are rarely black and white. Clarissa wasn't pure evil. I wasn't pure victim. We were 2 broken people trapped in a toxic cycle until one of us broke it. My advice: set boundaries early. Say no with love. Let people face consequences. Unlike the typical family revenge stories you hear, this wasn't about vengeance, it was about survival. To those saying I'm heartless, I'd rather she hate me from prison and find herself than love me from a grave. That's what makes this family drama story different. It's about tough love, not cold hearts. If this resonated, comment, have you chosen between love and boundaries? Share this with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more on family business and walking away. Thank you for staying until the end. Note, future family revenge stories may include fictionalized elements for education. If this isn't for you, please choose other content.